Some of our largest enterprise customers heavily depends on our API calls for reporting and data extraction without putting a load on their primary to achieve some degree of load distribution for queries that only require near-time data. This feature allows our customers to better utilize their secondary address manager investment. A justification for the deployment of a secondary address manager that moves beyond being a simple, redundant, warm standby only for replication. This feature also allows our customers to distribute specific API loads over multiple address managers that enable our customers to use the primary address manager only for operational usage only. By sending read-only queries to a secondary address manager, it improves the efficiency of automation and integration of their environment to provide better service delivery. Now, let's look at how does it work. In this configuration, both primary and secondary servers can be used simultaneously for API and GUI access. But all database transactions get processed by primary address manager. This approach creates some bottleneck because the database transactions get executed in primary. However, in 9.3, with offloading read-only queries to secondary, users can send queries to a secondary if they need read-only data. These queries get processed by secondary address manager without sending them to a primary. As these queries are read-only queries, they don't need to be updated in the primary DB. Therefore, users get the response directly from the secondary without creating any bottleneck in the process. In the following demo, we will be looking at how to initiate a read-only API session and some sample read-only API calls to retrieve some search and get data from secondary address manager. We will be using Postman as an API client, making those read-only API calls to secondary in Integrity 9.3. We'll also be looking at what happens if we try to write something in secondary address manager using read-only user session. In this demo, we log into secondary address manager as an API user, followed by creating an API token using login with options. Then you'll set is read-only parameters to true. And finally, we will be using API methods to make some read-only API calls to secondary address manager to retrieve some read-only data. Before we log into secondary address manager via API, let's look at some of the configurations we have made in our secondary address manager user interface. Later on this video, we will be retrieving this data using a read-only session. Here we have enabled our database replication as it's a prerequisite for read-only API calls. Here 23 is our secondary address manager and 20 is our primary address manager. Also, under configuration, we have created three configurations: base config, demo 1, and demo 2. Under IPA space, we have created two networks. Under the first network, we have created a DHCP deployment role. And under DHCP ranges, we have created a small DHCP range. Similarly, for the second network, we have created a similar DHCP deployment role, and under DHCP ranges, we have created a small DHCP range. Now let's log into the secondary address manager via API using login with options. And let's set the is read-only parameter to true. And if we send it, we get our API tokens for the user name API. And here .23 is our secondary address manager, and here is our API token. Now, by using search by object types, let's try to retrieve those three configurations that we have seen in the previous slide. Here we are just setting the type configuration, and then let's send the call. And as you can see, we retrieved our three configurations: base config, demo 1, and demo 2. Similarly, by using get DHCP deployment roles, we can retrieve our deployment roles. Here we have set the types DHCP deployment roles, and here are DHCP deployment roles. How about those DHCP ranges that we mentioned in the previous slides? By using get entity by name, we can get those ranges too. And here are our DHCP ranges. First one is from .2 to .5. Similarly, second one is also .2 to .5. Let's see what happens if we try to add a block in our secondary by using add IPv4 block CIDR. As expected, read-only session does not allow users to write on a secondary address manager. It will show an error message. A quick recap on what we have seen in the demo. We have looked at some configurations in secondary address manager. We have logged into a secondary address manager as an API user using an API client, Postman. And then we have created the API token and set the is read-only parameter to true. Finally, we have made a few read-only API calls, including search by object types, get DHCP deployment roles, etc. We also tried to add an IPv4 block in the secondary address manager to show that with a read-only API session, users cannot perform a write operation in secondary. Thanks again for watching this session.